Hey guys, for those of you that don't know me, I have been a Challenger player since set 3, and in this video, I'm going to be giving you guys a concise explanation on how to play in patch 14.6 if you want to climb. So right now, in the current meta, I think that the AP tree is slightly better than the AD tree. I think that the AP tree is a lot more consistent because for comps like Lilia and Syndra, you pretty much could stabilize at level 8 pretty consistently because you don't have to hit like too many legendary units. But if you're playing around Kaisa, a lot of the times you have to go 9 and fit your entire board. You have to look for Xayah, Udyr, and if you're playing around Ashe, this is kind of reliant on you hitting a Porcelain spat to even cap out, and you need to hit the Lissandra. So I would say that both of these are like really high roll AD comps, and if you miss, you're basically going dead last. Whereas if you're playing around Lilia, even if you miss the Lilia 2, you find like a random Azure 1, Hui 1, or like a Loon 2, you could easily put the items back onto, you could easily put those items onto that unit and you'll still be stable at level 8 and then you could go 9. I think some reroll comps are really good right now. So reroll Yone is really strong just because Yone right now is a super broken unit. I honestly think that Yone 2 is stronger than Kain 2. Reroll Bard is really good, and then reroll Inkshadow where you reroll Gnar and Senna is also very, very strong as well. And the thing with reroll comps is these are really good comps to play if you have a very weak opener, because you could just full open until 3-2 and then you roll down for the exact board to stabilize. Basically converts like an 8th into like a 5th. The last thing that I want to talk about is going to be Exalted. Exalted is like a new mechanic or trait in this set. Basically how I like to think about it is back in set 10, there was a Jazz trait where if you play 2 units from Jazz, your whole team gets a buff. In set 11, Exalted is basically Jazz, except the units for Exalted are randomized every game. And I think like the key difference between players winning games or not is whether or not they have Exalted in late game. So in my opinion, I would almost always try to see if I could fit in 3 Exalted, if it makes sense to put in 3 Exalted units into my late game board, because you basically get 15% damage on your entire team. But of course, if it's not convenient, you just play standard and then you probably won't win out. But Exalted really makes a huge difference in your late game board. I think this trait is slightly confusing to play around, so I'm going to give you guys like a quick like example. So here are some like sample Exalted like randomizers that you could play. So for example, in this first Exalted set, I would probably look to play around this Alune and this Nautilus. This fits perfectly into the Lilia Invoker board. And then I could splash in like a random unit. I would probably look to splash in the Rek'Sai here, because in the Invoker board, you do end up playing a Behemoth later on, which is Cho'Gath. For here, I would probably look into playing Annie, Silas, and then splash in a random Thresh. And then here, I would probably, there's 2 options. You could either play like a Yone variant with Shen and splash in this Hui, or you could primary carry the Lux or Ashe, play around the Hui, and then play Shen for frontline. So there's always a way to splash in Exalted towards the late game. If you're able to get like 3 Exalted in, your comp automatically in the late game becomes an S tier because you basically have 15% damage on every other player in the lobby. Openers you want to look out for. Faded is really strong. 2-star Yasuo, Ahri. Storyweaver is really good. The premier AD opener. This plays into Kaisa. Portion at 2-1. You just lost streak, cash out, and then play for the 3-2 or 3-5 spike. Yone opener. Get 1 Yone. It's like a free win streak until 3-2. And then the Mythic opener is pretty good as well. Onto the comps. S tier, Mythic Invokers, Dragonlord +1, and Exalted. And then in the A tier, these are all still really good. Porcelain +1, Faded +1, Reroll Gnar, Storyweaver Kaisa, Reroll Mythic, and Reroll Umbral. Here's a generic augment guide, and I listed the newly updated augments that you really want to look out for in set 11. By the time this video is posted, I will be streaming, so feel free to drop by and check out my other YouTube channel where I post VODs and explain my thought process. And finally, we could jump right into the comps. First comp I'm going to be covering is going to be Lilia. In my opinion, every single game, if you get AP items, you should definitely default to Lilia unless something comes up, like for example, if you get a Faded +1 or if you get like a really good reroll opener. If you have AP items, just default to Lilia and you basically will climb if you know how to pilot this comp. The comp is actually very simple to play. Your level 8 board is going to be Lilia, 4 other Mythic units, which is Tahm Kench, Nautilus, Cho'Gath, and Kog'Maw, and then 2 other Invokers, Annie and Lune, and Silas, the Bruiser, and also Umbral, gives you a little bit of extra frontline. Generally, I actually like itemizing the Tahm Kench over the Nautilus. I feel like Tahm Kench is actually really, really tanky, and a lot of times you will hit the Tahm Kench 2 way earlier than the Nautilus. You'll save a lot more HP. There are a few ways you could itemize Lilia. You could go blue buff, 1 AP item and 1 healing. You could also go the attack speed variant. So you go Guinsoo's, Shiv, and Merlo. This is sort of like the constant burn variation. And you could also go adaptive plus 2 AP items as well. All 3 of these work. I would say that if you had like blue buff and a Shojin, you should definitely put the blue buff on the Lilia, because Shojin can be put on another one of your later AP carries like Azir or Hui. If you already have 3 items on Lilia, you could put the Merlo on the Lune instead. And then later on, so let's say like you're able to go 9 and you get like a Mythic +1. You could play into 7 Mythic, and the 7 Mythic board will look something like this. You just play a Hui for 7 Mythic, and then you put the Mythic spat on the Annie or something. So if you want to like Omega cap out with this board, eventually you do want to drop down to 3 Mythic from 5 Mythic. And the board is usually going to look something like this. Your 3 Mythic units are going to be Lilia, Hui, and your Nautilus. Set for 2 Umbral and 2 Warden. Behemoth, Ornn, you play Ornn because you want Dryad for Azir. And then this is basically your level 9 board. If you're able to get to this point, you usually win the lobby. So the other premier AP carry that you want to play towards in the current patch is going to be Syndra. So remember how I said you're defaulting towards Lilia? Well, if you get like a random spat, or if you get like a random faded emblem, then you definitely want to change your plans and look into playing towards Syndra instead. So one of the key strengths of Syndra is that you stabilize really, really hard at level 8 if you get a faded +1. The reason why is because you get 7 faded in without hitting the set. And the board at level 8 is actually extremely cheap. If you look at it, you're playing around a bunch of 1 and 2 costs. So a lot of the times you just get like a 2-star frontline, 1-star Syndra, and this board is actually good enough to sit, and then you could go 9 and play your true board that you want to play. So best in slot Syndra is going to be blue buff, Gunblade, and Deathcap. And once you get to 9, there are 2 different variations you could play. You could either play into the 4 Arcanist variant with 7 faded, in which case you're playing around Illaoi. Illaoi is good because she's an Arcanist and she's also a Warden for sets. And you could also play around the Lissandra, and Lissandra is a very good candidate to put your faded emblem on. Lissandra caps out very high because she's going to constantly farm you a lot of items. The other variation is going to be around 4 Behemoth, in which case you're playing around Udyr and Yorick. Yorick gives you Umbral, and then Udyr is a very good candidate to put your faded spat on, and then you just put the rest of your like carry items or tank items on your Udyr as well. In the case that you end up hitting like a random 2-star Syndra and you don't have a faded +1, you could actually still play around the Syndra. Probably you're just playing for top 4 though, but I think the board would look something like this. You're just playing around 6 Arcanists and 3 faded instead. And then at level 8, you probably won't have the Galio. And then once you go 9, you want to cap out around Lissandra, Galio, and Set. And yeah, that's pretty much it for Syndra. So one AD comp that you want to play towards in the current meta is going to be around Kaisa. I think in the current meta, Kaisa is really important to know how to play, because one of the best openers right now in the early game is around 3 Storyweaver, 2 Trickshot. So if you're itemizing the Teemo with blue buff Merlo, you can play into like Lilia or something. But if you have this opener and you're playing around like the Sivir with AD items, chances are that you want to play into Kaisa, because a lot of these units transition very easily into the level 8 Kaisa board. The level 8 Kaisa board generally looks something like this. You're just playing around 3 Storyweaver and 4 Bruiser. And your dual carries are going to be Kaisa and Morgana. You put all of your Teemo items onto your Morgana and all of your Sivir items onto your Kaisa. There are 3 ways to itemize Kaisa. Generally, I like 1 item that helps her cast and 2 damage items. So for example, red buff helps her cast and then 2 damage items. Shojin, 2 damage items. Red buff, 2 damage items. You get the idea. And all of your tank items go onto your Galio. So I think one advantage of the Kaisa board is that it plays around a lot of the cheaper units like Sivir, Riven, Aatrox, Jax, all these units that you already had in your opener. This gives Kaisa the advantage of going to level 9 a lot quicker than some of the other comps. And at level 9, you really want to look for your sets. Set is sort of like the missing link in your board. It makes your frontline a lot more tanky, also gives you Umbral, and Set is just a very good unit by himself. If you're able to get to 9 with this board, you probably will get like top 4s, but again, because the AP line is just so strong right now, you probably will lose out to like the capped Invoker boards. If you get like a Storyweaver +1, there are some other variations you could play. So for example, at level 8, the Storyweaver +1 variant will look something like this. You just play around like the Kaisa here, you drop the Morgana, and then at level 9, so at level 8, you can't really fit in 7 Weaver without dropping your damage, but you can play 7 Storyweaver at level 9. And your Level 9 board is going to look something like this, and you usually do not want to play the Kaisa in the Storyweaver +1 variant. Instead, you want to put all of your AD items on your Irelia, and you duo carry the Wukong and the Lee Sin as well. Next comp I'll be talking about in the AD tree is going to be Ashe. So unfortunately, Ashe is a comp where you could really only play if you're high rolling, because it's reliant on you going 9, and it's reliant on you getting a Porcelain emblem. If you don't have both of these conditions fulfilled, you should probably play something else like Yone or Kain, because you're just going to buff 4. But basically, the level 9 comp is going to look something like this. You're primary carrying the Ashe and you're dual carrying the Wukong. You also want to put the Porcelain emblem on the Rakan. Best in slot Ashe, in my opinion, is going to be Gunblade, Last Whisper +1. The third item should ideally be some sort of attack speed item, because Ashe is a unit that scales. You want either Gwyntu's or QSS as your third item. The other variation you could play without Porcelain, but you need to be super high rolling to play it, is going to be something like this. You're just going to be playing 4 Arcanist, 4 Porcelain, and you're playing 3 Faded with Set and Aphelios. First reroll comp is going to be Yone. I think this comp is really good for top 4ing and also could win out a lot of games if you're able to hit Yone 3 and Elune 3. If you get dropped like a random Yone at 2-1, you could think about playing towards some sort of variation of this comp. Basically, best in slot Yone is going to be Titans QSS +1. The third item should ideally be some sort of healing, so it could be BT, Hodge, Gunblade, all are good. I like Kain to hold GA and some type of armor shred to help shred armor for my Yone. So Last Whisper is good, Even Shot is good, and then the third item I just put some sort of healing on him. The game plan for this comp is to play tempo until you're level 7, and then at 4-1 you slow roll above 50 gold for 3-star Yone and 3-star Elune. Generally, your level 7 board is going to look exactly like this. Of course, there are some variations, and Elune is going to be your Morello holder. She likes 1 mana item and Morello. So once you hit Yone 3, Elune 3, you want to push levels, and then at level 8, you probably just going to be playing around in Ornn. Put Ornn around the unit that you want to put your items on, because he will farm an item for your main carry during the fight by the time he ults. So there are a few variations to this comp if you get a Reaper +1, or an Umbral +1. So the 6 Umbral variation looks something like this. You just play 6 Umbral, 4 Reaper at level 8, pretty standard. And then if you get a Reaper +1, you just want to Reaper spat the Kain instead, and then you're going to be playing a board like this with Morgana for Ghostly. Ghostly is a very good Morello spreader. So note that this comp, you don't actually need 3-star Yone. For example, like if you're contested and you don't want to play like one of those giga high roll AD comps like Kaisa or Ashe, this is actually a perfectly fine level 8 board to play around that could usually actually get you a 3rd or a 4th if you have like these exact items on your Yone and Kain. It's a really good comp. It's top 4 if you have AD items and you don't know what to do. But yeah, always keep this comp open, in my opinion, if you have AD items. Okay, so the other reroll comp you want to look out for is going to be reroll Senna and Gnar. So for this comp, this is one of those comps that's actually hard forceable. So for example, if you just have like a completely shit opener and shit items, you could actually just full open until stage 3-2, go on a 6 lose streak. You'll probably be at level 6 with around 50 gold to roll. You'll also have pick pile, so you'll be able to hand pick the items you want for your Gnar and your Senna. And then you roll for this exact board, and you hopefully want Jax 2, Rek'Sai 2, Aatrox 2, and either Gnar 2 or Senna 2. The game plan is to then win streak between stage 3-2 all the way until stage 4-2. You want to slow roll above 50 gold until you hit 3-star Gnar and 3-star Senna. And then if you find an Aatrox, you pick up the Aatrox as well. And then afterwards, you just push levels. Itemization wise, Senna usually takes the offensive Inkshadow component and then 2 offensive items, usually Last Whisper and Deathblade. If you get like the tank component instead, you just put it on your Aatrox, and then you just put a 3rd item on your Senna. It could be Runans, IE, GS, they're all pretty good. And then Gnar really likes Titans, BT +1. 3rd item could be another Titans, it could also be Hodge, it could also be Sterix. If you're able to 3-star your Aatrox, that would be a really good bonus, because you could just put all of your tank items on your Aatrox, and then you could also keep Jax open as well if you go for Jax 3. That's pretty much it for this comp. You don't have to lose streak to this comp. Like for example, like if you just get like a random Senna opener with good items on her, and you get like 2 other Inkshadow units, you could just play tempo, and then at level 6 you slight roll for a stable board, and then you slow roll above 50, same plan. But I think this comp is really strong right now in the current meta, one of the better reroll comps. Another reroll comp you could play is going to be Reroll Mythic. So this comp is not a comp where you could full open and play at 3-2, unfortunately, because Mythic needs 4 turns for your team to get the full stats. So if you full open and then you play into 5 Mythic, you end up sacking 4 more rounds because your board is weak as shit, and then you're going to be like at like 2 HP, and then you're just going to die when you hit. So I think this comp, you probably could only play if you get like a Mythic opener. So for example, let's say like you get like a random Cho'Gath 2, random Nico, and random Kog'Maw, and you could have like Kog'Maw hold all your Bard items for now, and then at level 6 you want to slight roll for Tahm Kench and Bard just so you can start getting those 4 stacks early, and then at 4-1 you go level 7. You slight roll for 2-star Tahm Kench, 2-star Bard, and then you fully itemize your Bard and your Tahm Kench. Econ back up, slow roll above 50, and then you send it one more time at stage 5 usually for 3-star Tahm Kench, 3-star Bard, and then you push levels. Best in slot Bard is going to be Gunblade, Gwyntoos +1. Third item is usually another Gwyntoos or a GS. Tahm Kench just does really well with 3 generic tank items. When you go level 8, I think there are 2 options that you could play. You could either play 7 Mythic, so the 7 Mythic board is probably like this, or you could actually just play more frontline. So you could probably drop, let's try dropping Lilia and Kog'Maw. You pretty much just want to fill out your frontline because you already have most of your damage from Bard. So probably another Bruiser and another Warden. So maybe something like this, and your board is really, really good. The primary, like you already have enough damage with Bard. He does an obscene amount of damage. You kind of just want more frontline. And then later on, if you do have the econ, you go 9, you drop out of like 5 Mythic, you play 3 Mythic, and then you play into the typical Lilia board with like Azir, you play into Azir, Lilia, Hui, etc. Alrighty, that's the end of my guide for 14.6. Just a quick reminder that the comps I listed, you should always try to splash in Exalted even if it deviates from the comps I listed. This is super important because it essentially turns an A tier comp into S tier if you're able to splash that trait in. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys enjoyed the video, we would really appreciate the YouTube sub or a follow on Twitch. By the time this video is posted, I will be streaming, so come check me out, and I'll see y'all next time. See ya.